The next thing to talk about when learning about programming is variables and coding standards. So the concept of a variable is, I don't know why when this is presented in programming courses, often it sounds a little confusing. But all a variable is, in math, when we think of variables, we think of like, y equals mx plus b, or we think of, 23x equals 46, solve for x, right? In which case x would be 2. 46 divided by 23 would be 2. And that would be a variable in math. In programming, a variable is a container that can hold a value. What does that mean? So here I have da, 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 da. I have a variable which I've declared in PHP, which is a web programming language. And I've said, hey, make this variable test1, set it equal to Todd. And then when I say echo, which means show me that variable, I say show me that variable. And then I also did a variable down here and set test2 equal to date. And then I said show me that variable, right? And I could even, well, let's just see what they do. So when I look at this in a browser, it shows me the variable Todd and it shows me the date. If I was to come down here and if I was to change what is in this variable, so I could say, variable test1 equals, and let's see what that looks like if we play that. Variable test1 equals Todd, right? So that's what it equals now. But if I was to change what is stored in that variable, that container, to John or whatever, or let's go with McLeod. There we go, and then save it and play it. Now variable test1 is equal to McLeod. So all a variable is a container that can hold a value. And you need to know that when you start getting into programming. So that's what a variable is. The next thing for you to know is what? Coding standards. And so whenever you write a program, there'll be a variety of coding standards. And so like one of those coding standards will be to provide comments, right? To comment your work. And so if I was to come in here, I could write comments for my work, like right here is a comment that kind of tells me what's going on in this file. So it's just a comment. When anybody else reads this or when I read this later, what the heck was I doing in this file? It'll tell me kind of what I was thinking with this piece of code or whatever. So commenting is a very common uh, commenting is a very common coding standard. And then we also have things like camel case or prefixes. So if I was to use, naming my variables, I might call this first name, right? And now that variable is called first name. So I come down here, and when I want to print that variable, I'd name it like that. But notice how I've capitalized here. This is called camel case, where the first letter of any variable is, uppercase. So that would be camel case. It looks like maybe I did something wrong. See, I got a little error there, and then I can put my thing over it, and I can see what it says. Maybe I need a space right there. No, what's that error say? Syntax error. Identifier first name after instance expected, something like that. So, oh, I need the $sign. There we go. You see how lovely it is? And that $sign tells PHP it's a variable. All right, so that was a syntax error, which this programming environment NetBeans helped me fix. And now when I play this, variable test1 is now equal to Todd, and I use camel case to name my variable. So that's a coding convention, a coding standard. All right, so you've learned about variables, and you've learned about coding standards. Prefixes, last thing I'll say about coding standards, prefixes is if I wanted to have a prefix, like if this was coming from a database, I might have the prefix of DB in front of that variable, and that would tell me that's coming from a database maybe or something like that. So I could add prefixes to my variables. So those are just a few coding standards that are out there. The main thing you should get is that variables are containers which can hold values. Encoding standards are, standards by which we write our programming code, our code, to help make it more readable and to help make it more logical. And so there's a variety of coding standards out there. And there's some common ones that go across all languages, and then, there's coding standards that vary from language to language. All right.